any company with traditional corporate governance and a strong board probably would have made changes already at the CEO, COO level, or both. I think what you have here is Zuckerberg, because he controls the vote, basically would be making a decision on himself and his mentor. And so it's highly unlikely that there will be anything that's done. Mm-hmm. My point in our note was just simply that given that the company seems to, be beginning to lose its employee base, it's kind of already lost Silicon Valley with many prominent members of the Valley turning against it, shareholders as represented by the stock price, some indications of advertisers and politicians and regulators, it gets to the point where fresh faces are a good thing. And I think, in my opinion, that may be the case here, even though it's unlikely to happen.
It's unlikely to happen. That seems to me like that underscores the case as to why the stock would not be buy rated as you have it here. I mean, if the real problem is that, the CEO and the COO are still in place, and the other problem is that there is unlikely to be any changes, then how do we know that the problem doesn't get worse, or that the problem is even addressed if the same people are allowed to remain in their positions?
I think that's fair. I mean, the ones that got you here are the ones that are going to get you out, right? And that's, I think, the risk is trusting in that. I think, what's supporting a buy rating, or what makes a stock interesting at current levels, is that Facebook, the family owning Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, which are the three most dominant social platforms globally, having 2 billion users, in a stock that trades at 18 times earnings, which should still grow in 19 and 20 at levels in the mid-20s, that would typically suggest fundamentally, that the stock is in a good position to appreciate. But this sideshow, which doesn't seem to be going away, is definitely a huge headwind against that view.
You're not the only one calling for management changes. We just heard from Jim Tierney, who's the CIO at AB, saying that he thought that the CEO and the chairman job should be separated, and has told the company so. What do you think, in the meantime, while this push and pull over management remains, what do you think the danger is that the scandal deepens into something with real consequences, regulatory fines, or something more?
Well, I think that is certainly underway, and the more fuel that's added with more information that's provided, such as the article in the New York Times, which was referenced by one of the politicians that you had on earlier today, I think it was Mark Warner, as something that they don't like to hear some of the details about. It certainly makes the conversations more difficult, and potentially the regulation more stringent when we get to that point. My guess is we'll end up in the U.S. with a GDPR-like implementation, similar to what happened in Europe, which has been pretty manageable. And so I think regulation will be manageable, but I think Facebook has now these existential kind of threats in terms of the business model itself and whether the right individuals are running it, and that's not just one of the constituencies. It's numerous now, including the employee base.
What does GDPR mean, just for an idiot like me who doesn't know?
It's a data regulation that's been put in place in Europe to give control of data to consumers.
Okay, I want to go back to the egg that Melissa cracked there about basically asking you to defend a buy rating in what you describe is in the face of heavy headwinds, and your price target is what, 186? That would be a $46 a share gain from here. I'd like to hear you talk a little more about how they get there with what you describe as very serious leadership headwinds.
Well, I think to the extent that it does get there, because as much as I'd like to think so, all of my price objectives are not achieved. But to the extent that in this case it does occur, and there's a sensible logic to the approach of getting there to that valuation, I think if you assumed stable management and the ability to get beyond this crisis, as has been seeming to be the case up until just here in the past few days with new revelations, then I think you can very easily get to a low 22, 23 multiple on 20 earnings, and still think that you have a stock that's pretty fairly valued, which is around where our price target is.
And what would make you either change your rating or lower your price target quickly?
lowering the price target would just be based on deteriorating fundamentals or something that happens as it relates to this management situation that were negative.
Right.
And downgrading the stock, I think would be a further deterioration in user trends, which would be damaging to the long-term value of the company.